Good morning and welcome to another episode of Bold Business. I'm back and I'm David Grasso from GenFKD, a nonprofit dedicated to helping millennials understand money and entrepreneurship. Joining me today is Holland Haas, just like the avocado.
Absolutely. Better, a little better.
I'm so happy to have you here because we need pushback with millennials. You know, we just say things and we need your wisdom and your experience, and you're still looking great,
So
but you're still older than me.
Wait, basically you're saying I don't look like a millennial?
No, I'm not saying that.
For the show?
No.
Wow, we're going there right away.
No. I mean, it's fungible. You're not a millennial, but you might be an Xer. So anyway, so Holland is a corporate leadership consultant, digital wellness strategist, author, and speaker, and incredibly knowledgeable on everything. So we're going to have a little fun today.
I think so.
Absolutely. So why don't we jump right into our headline? So first we have a couple breaking ones that aren't in the prompter that we can talk about.
All right, surprise
So
me.
we're doing it off the cuff. So you heard about Apple and the iPhone X sales, didn't you, Holland?
I did. They're going to cut that in half. And now my brain immediately thought I've got to get my X because I haven't gotten it yet. But also with the iPhone, might this be an Apple trick? Might they be telling us they're going to cut the numbers in half so that we all run out and buy it and then they really ramp up production?
I don't know. From my angle, I think they're not selling as well as they imagined. I mean, possibly. Maybe it's a little bit of what you're saying, a little bit of what I'm saying, etc. I think I live in a bubble because all my friends have iPhone X's. So
So you don't have one?
No. I'm not an iPhone user. Strictly Samsung Droid. So there are no Apple products in my house. This, ladies and gentlemen, is from work. So
all right.
I have an Apple-free home. I think they're a great company. They have great values. They have a lot of shiny, pretty products that don't do really a lot.
Now, see, I love the iPhone. I absolutely love what it delivers to me, and when I'm on the go, when I'm on the move, I like the Plus. And it's not because of eyes or you know, that my eyes are bad. It's really, it allows me to have that larger screen. So I don't have to carry a tablet or get it out. I don't have to have the iPad, and I like having that plus size.
Well, you know, the most important piece of technology we have in our lives now are phones. So always remember, my parents actually have the Google Pixel, so does my brother, which is the counterpart to the iPhone X. And it was $1,400, and it's just as fabulous as the price suggests.
Is it for $1,400?
Yeah, and the iPhone X that my friend Dr. Baxter, hello, he has
Hi,
an
doctor.
iPhone. He has a $1,400 iPhone X, and it's also fantastic.
All right.
But I guess they're not selling as well, so stay tuned for that with Apple. And the other big news out of the healthcare world is that JP Morgan, Berkshire Hathaway, and Amazon are coming together to share healthcare plans. So healthcare has become too expensive. Warren Buffett's called it the all-American tapeworm. We can call it Pac-Man. It's eating up a bigger share of our GDP every day. So these three massive companies have said enough is enough. We are going to self-insure. What do you think about that, Holland?
I think it's fantastic. I think this country needs something like that, and this is really going to shift the conversation from those larger companies who are putting profits over people when it comes to healthcare. And so we're going to see a shift of people over profits, and that's going to make a really big difference.
And what do you think about your healthcare premium? What is it?
It's crazy. It's over $1,000 a month, and I'm grateful that I have it. I'm incredibly grateful that I'm covered, but I also understand I broke a toe over the holidays. Silly accident. I stumbled in a door frame, right?
Yeah.
And I was so grateful that I could go to an outpatient facility,
of course, yeah.
and I could be treated. And I thought about the people who can't do that. And I thought about how this could potentially be catastrophic for those folks. And we've got to shift that. We've got to shift that so that everyone can take care of themselves in the way that they
You know,
need to.
and I'm as much of a free market person as anyone out there, but, you know, I have a friend who lost his job, and he's depressed, and he doesn't have access to health care. And I think that's, sometimes our system is profoundly unfair and difficult. And I understand there are costs to be borne, and maybe Medicaid expansion isn't the right answer for all states, but I think we need to better analyze our healthcare system. And when you see people like JP Morgan, Amazon, and Berkshire Hathaway making these big moves, you know we got a problem.
Well, and let's talk about the flip side of your friend. The cost of being depressed is far more expensive than the cost of someone who is healthy and who either gets therapy or is able to go and get some sort of treatment. It costs us more in the long run when we have people who are depressed.
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree. So now that we've gone off script, let's go back to the script. Our first headline comes to us from Visual Capitalist. Big fan. Vancouver, Canada. This guy does it all himself, and is about the price change of common grocery items over the past decade. The infographic, which you see here, shows quite a spike in the price of grains and proteins over the past decade, while most fruits and vegetables have remained around the same price. So look at this. You got pasta. In 2007, it was 88 cents. Now it's $1.28. White bread, 120 to 134. And if you roll the other one, look at all-purpose flour, 36 to 52 cents. White rice, 55 cents to 72 cents. Massive rises.
There are. And while I agree that we've seen an increase in both proteins and grains, I think we've seen a price increase in our fruits and vegetables. I know they're saying that's a little more stable, but I don't feel that when I go to the grocery store. How about you?
I think everything's expensive now.
I agree.
And I don't know if I'm misremembering, as politicians like to say, but to me, and 10 years ago, I was only 23, so I was just new to the grocery world. I was just coming out of college, but it felt cheaper. I remember that much. I used to remember that $100 just very generally bought me a lot.
Yes, and how about the fact that once you got your produce and you got it home, it lasted much longer than it does today. So not only are we paying more, the quality has declined.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree. And we'd love to hear from you in the audience if you have commentary on any of these headlines. Moving on, our next headline comes from Florida Atlantic University in my home state of Florida. And a study finding that bank lending to small businesses is still depressed, even almost 10 years after the U.S. financial crisis in 2008. The study shows that troubled banks severely reduced their business lending, which, of course, negatively affects the economy. Holland,
yes.
The banks still aren't lending to small business.
They're not. I'm not sure that the smaller banks can afford to. We've had so much M&A in that sector that big banks are controlling everything and they're really calling the shots. And the smaller companies, these small businesses, really rely on those neighborhood banks and those smaller banks. So they can't afford to take the risk. And so we're going to need to find some happy medium. We need some equilibrium in this sector.
But just push back. If they start loaning nilly-willy like they did back when I was a kid, we're going to get in trouble again, aren't we?
Well, we're not saying willy-nilly. We're not saying that it's all or nothing. We need to find those gray areas. And don't we find that everywhere in life, that when we really explore the gray areas, that's where the gold is?
Absolutely. So our third headline comes to us from the Washington Post and is about the U.S. gross domestic product, or GDP. According to the news alert, economic growth slowed in the fourth quarter of 2017, causing a little bit of a headache for the Trump administration. President Trump, of course, had previously said that GDP could go far beyond 3%. But, of course, the slow fourth quarter brought the GDP down to an annualized rate of 2.6%, which also broke the two-quarter streak of growth of more than 3%. Now, I think we have to have a conversation about percentages, right? We're stuck on 3%, but remember, when you already have a large economy, it's hard to grow at 3%.
It is hard to grow at 3%. I think tonight's State of the Union is going to be imperative. And I say that because there have been a lot of promises, a lot of big, bold, if we'll say, promises that have been made by the administration. And I think tonight is really, the training wheels are off. The first year in the White House, we've come to a close.
Of course.
We're moving forward. And I think we're really going to have a clear-cut plan of what those deliverables are going to be. When we're promising numbers of greater than 3%, we're going to have to understand how that's going to happen.
We still have the world's largest economy by many measures.
Yes.
And economic growth is good. So I don't think we should be necessarily married to a number. I think a lot of times economic growth and GDP is a very crude measure of the way to look at things. We really have to look at jobs more than anything. And, I've seen a lot of funny clips where politicians go, it's all about jobs, it's all about jobs. But there's a lot of truth in that.
There is a lot of truth.
How is the average American doing? Are they able to find meaningful work? Are they able to get health care? Are they able to access education and safe housing and live in nice neighborhoods?
And get the loans from a small bank.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So, it's a lot more complicated than just let's grow 3%. And unfortunately, this is one of the parts of the Trump administration where they've kind of backed themselves into a corner, because 2.6% is actually very good.
It's not horrible. It's not.
I would go as far to say it is very good.
Number.
If you look at the European Union, they wish they had that high of a growth rate.
They do. But remember, if you're going to promise one thing, you've really got to bring in those deliverables, because we've got a lot of areas where promises have been made, and now it's time we have to understand the plan to get to those deliverables.
Well, hopefully, and we're not supposed to talk about politics here, but I'm very curious to see in the State of the Union tonight what he's going to say about immigration.
Yes.
And really, and let's remember, all criticism aside, last year his speech was very good. It was very good. It was the first one that everyone agreed, even, you know, the most liberal or the most conservative, that said that was a presidential speech. So I'm hoping for the state of our country that, you know, we're all rooting for our president in the sense that he is our president.
Yes, he is.
So, and we're hoping that, you know, he outlines a clear and concise plan of how we can make life better for all Americans.
We want to remember his success is our success. So we do want him to be successful.
We tend to forget that. But anyway, enough about politics, because this show is not about politics, Holland.
It is not. We are moving on now to our all-star lineup of guests. Well, our first guest started his first company at the age of 15 with $1,000, and he bootstrapped it up to over $2 million a year by his freshman year in college. Wow, that is a wow.
I wouldn't be able to do that.
His latest venture is Current Media, which focuses on mass millennial and Gen Z cryptocurrency adoption through an incentive-based media streaming ecosystem. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So cryptocurrencies, wow, this is big. This is something that I know a lot of people have, they've dove headfirst into cryptocurrencies, and then there are others who are on the side of the pool.
Right.
Other investors that feel that they're a little, you know, they have too much trepidation to jump in. So I think my first question for you is, for most of the investors who are on the sidelines, what do you...
Me?
Yeah, I am as well. I am as well. What do you see as the next steps needed to further legitimize the cryptocurrencies?
Yeah, I think that, you know, one of the things that, how I basically tell people that are just jumping in is that, you know, if you're going to go and do, you know, short-term day trading and things like that, like I wouldn't do that, right? Because I think that you're going to see losses. But, you know, the technology that's you know, coming out today, you know, the long-term value that you'll have, I believe will be much higher than, you know, what we're seeing today. And, you know, with Current specifically, the way that we thought about this to basically, you know, bring it to a mainstream audience was to do it based off of something like media consumption, which is something that we do every day. So at Current, we reward you for your time and your data and your attention when you're consuming on these different services with cryptocurrency. So now you don't have to...
Is there a specific one? Do you reward with Bitcoin or where?
So we actually have our own that we're launching, and
everyone's doing that. We've had several people with their own cryptocurrencies.
Yeah. So and essentially what that allows, it allows you to basically, it measures that attention, right? You can then use that to pay down those memberships. But we also have advertisers that buy directly within the network, because we also pay, you know, the creators and the curators on the network. So, you know, there's a dollar value associated to that. But this is basically an easy way for now you to get into it without necessarily having to put money into the technology or deal with wallets and all the hassles, because you don't really see what's happening. You know, we really focus on the user experience in Current to make it the easiest, most effective way to, you know, jump in and bring it to a mass audience at a mass scale.
How did you get into cryptocurrencies? What took you in that direction?
So I started investing in it when I was just, you know, out of college. I found out about it totally random. Someone was like, yeah, I'm mining. And I also, you know, like most people are like, so is this guy like a coal miner or something like that?
And then, not my goal.
Not my brother mines. It's a big thing.
Right. And then I looked into it and I thought it was super interesting. But it kind of just stayed there. You know, I invested in it a bit. That over time went, you know, pretty well. And then we started building on it because I think that, you know, the future of, like, you know, and we've always been focused in media and like this incentive-based ecosystem. So I really think that, you know, today the most important asset that we own as people is our attention, right? It's our attention, it's our time, and it's our data. And I don't think that we own our data today. The average kid today is spending about 5 hours a day consuming media on their phone, and that's only going up. And if you project that out in the course of the 30,000 days that we live, which is about 82 years, it's about 16 years of our life, and it's going up, and we don't own that data and time. And so at Current, we're really setting a precedent of what media consumption is going to look like as we go into the next 2 to 5 years and beyond. And I don't believe it will just be Current and my platform that has this incentive-based ecosystem. It'll be several others, and we allow these other platforms to also use our technology to launch their own incentive-based ecosystems, which then, you know, brings people the ability to bring more premium subscriptions as consumers, and, you know, have a better consumption experience independent of where you are in this world, right? And that's, I think, was the most important thing.
So, Senor Novais, right? Brazilian, Portuguese?
I am from Brazil, yes.
Yeah, of course you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what, an audience question here, what was his first company when he was 15? So part of the whole business is you got to tell us about yourself, Dan.
I will
You
give it to
pitched the
you.
company.
I'll give it to you.
What's your personal history there?
Yeah, so when I was 15, believe it or not, the first thing that I got into was I was using my employee discount at Polo to sell these leather jackets on eBay. And that's how I got my first like little startup capital, you know, and then what I started doing being from Brazil is importing and exporting consumer goods overseas. Basically, you guys were talking about iPhones and things like earlier, but the price in Brazil for an iPhone is actually 3x the price here because of import taxes. And usually there's a 6-month lag between the time it comes out between here and there. So I would be the first person selling it, and then I expanded into Europe or the UK, which allowed me to be all over European Union, Australia, and that's how, you know, we got to about $2 million with, you know, the $1,000 I started buying my random Polo jackets.
You're from Florida, obviously, with all that shopping. Huh?
I'm actually from a very small town in Indiana.
Really?
But I grew up between, you know, so I still speak Portuguese and very connected to that culture. But yeah, I grew up in like a you know, 25,000. Ironically, Mike Pence is from my town. Yes.
Really?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So
absolutely.
Super small town.
So
Indiana.
how do you feel like, you know, you come from a country that doesn't have a very free market, and you created your first business. I mean, you have a fundamental understanding that we have some of the cheapest merch in the world.
Yeah.
Right. How have you used the U.S. system to be an entrepreneur?
Well, I think
you wouldn't have been able to do in your home country.
Yeah, I think what it allowed me to do is actually have a perspective that people don't necessarily get, especially at that age, right? And I saw, you know, how, you know, in the United States, you know, we're such a consumeristic society, and, you know, pretty much everything revolves around the dollar. And, you know, you come from this country, Brazil, where the average income is $800 a year, a month, but these items are skewed to the rich because of these massive import taxes. So I think that, you know, any entrepreneur, the way you look at it is like, you know, what's my situation and how can I, you know, use what I have at my ability and think about things in a much grander scale, you know, and I think that it's important as an entrepreneur to always think about that, you know, that point of view, because it's not just what we have here. It's important to take a step outside and look outside the box, you know.
Starting your business at such a young age, how did you know it was the right time? How can you help other entrepreneurs to know when it's time to start a business and then when it's time to sell a business and close the door and move in a different direction?
Yeah, and I've had both of those, good and bad, my whole life. I think that, you know, for me personally, it goes back to just, you know, the time that you have, right? And I'm like, what's the worst thing that could happen to me? If this business fails, it's just a lesson, right? You learn a lesson, and then that allows you to move on to the next business. If I look at the trajectory between every single company I've started, some have gone well and some have not. But at the same time, those are lessons that you learn. And when you go into your next business, and, you know, what we're doing today with Current, you know, we have literally hundreds of thousands of people trying to get in this token sale and raising tens of millions of dollars in a very short period of time. And we have so much money trying to get in that we don't even have room for. But had I not had those experiences, yeah, it's a very unique problem. But had I not had those experiences earlier to try and see, like, you know, what are the things that I'm going to likely fail in, or what are the issues? And there are probably a host of others now that I'm getting into this other realm. But, you know, that allowed us to properly run our company today and do, you know, the best that we can. You know, so you have to look at every failure as an opportunity to learn again and try again and succeed. And I think every major entrepreneur has always thought about things in that way. Yeah.
Well, that's usually the last question I ask, Holland. It's always like, absolutely. What's your advice for other millennials? So in one sentence, failure could be a lesson.
Failure is a lesson, yes, and opportunities to try again and succeed, you know.
Well, Dan, best of luck to you.
Best of luck. Yeah, it sounds like you've enjoyed a lot of success. We'll keep watching you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right. Next up, we have our weekly Bookster segment. Bookster is a website for book lovers and much more. Joining us today is Chris Burniske, author of Cryptoassests. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
Yes.
We love authors on this show.
You've got the book.
So cryptocurrency. Go ahead, Holland. It's such a confusing topic for so many of us.
It is. I mean, we get that it's the digital currency. We understand that piece. But I think what I'm curious about is there's such a fluctuation in the market. I read some report last week where it said, I think year-to-date Bitcoin is down 20%. And then, again, there was, let me see, it was Ethereum is up 28% on the year. And then Ripple is down 45% on the year. Are those the type of fluctuations that someone can expect if they're going to dip into the pool of cryptocurrencies?
So I think with any disruptive innovation like this, when we look at the history of how they unfold, whether it be railroads in the 1800s or the auto industry early 1900s or the tech and telecom boom and really bringing information technology online, there's always booms and busts. It's part and parcel of the cycle. There's a really great book out there called by Carlotta Perez called Technological Revolutions in Financial Capital, where she goes through these very sort of predictable phases of the rollout of any new technology. What I would say specifically with crypto assets, and I call them that, and I name the book that because it goes far beyond currencies, is that anyone who's getting involved right now should expect volatility, but what's going on in the space goes far beyond the markets and the price action.
So Chris, do you own Bitcoin?
I do own Bitcoin.
So you believe in it?
I definitely believe in it.
Why? Lay the case for it, because I get asked this question all the time. Everyone's always like, oh, you're a business anchor. Do you have Bitcoin? Why should I invest in Bitcoin?
So Bitcoin specifically, I don't give investment advice. So you're going to have to make that decision yourself. But
cryptocurrencies.
When I think about Bitcoin specifically, and then we can go to crypto assets more broadly, Bitcoin is money over IP and digital gold. So just as in the 80s and 90s, it was expensive to make a phone call to an international location, and it was a laborious process, but now voice over IP, things like Skype, things like FaceTime, make that seamless and free. We with Bitcoin now have money over IP, money over internet protocol, that makes sending transactions. Right now, the network has gotten more expensive, but as scaling technologies are implemented, we see really fast and quite cheap transactions, just as calling someone internationally is cheap. On the other side of it, you have digital gold. So Bitcoin converges upon a fixed supply of 21 million units by 2140, and that disinflationary going on deflationary supply schedule makes it a really good store of value. So that's the case for Bitcoin. The case for crypto assets more broadly, I would say this is the native asset class to information networks. So it's more akin to the innovation that equities represented as a way to organize and incentivize human activity than a replacement for fiat currencies.
When did you get into Bitcoin? Were you in 8, 9 years ago, or is it recent?
Well, Bitcoin was just started about 8, 9 years ago. And so I personally became interested in 2012, professionally involved in 2014.
Yeah, okay.
We have a Facebook question. Can you buy Bitcoin with Bitcoin? How the heck does that work?
I'm confused by that.
I'm confused by that as well.
You cannot. So you can think of Bitcoin as really any other asset, where if I'm going to buy, a cup of coffee, or if I'm going to buy a piece of paper or a share of Facebook stock, I need to exchange another asset, a different asset for that asset, right? I couldn't buy a share of Facebook stock with a share of Facebook stock. I would have to trade, some amount of US dollars for that Facebook stock. And so with the crypto asset markets, we see that there are a number of different, you call them trading pairs. So I can buy Bitcoin with Ether, or I can buy Bitcoin with the US dollar or the yen.
So you
or
can buy
the yuan
Bitcoin with
the
other
pound.
cryptocurrencies?
Yes.
Wow. See, we learned something.
Yes,
Sometimes you start with basic questions and you get great answers.
We've got gold.
So where do we go from here? Because you seem like you did a lot of research to get this big book out onto the market. Where do you think we go from here?
Well, we're definitely going to continue to go through fluctuations in the market, but more importantly, what we're seeing is a massive influx of developer talent and just entrepreneurial talent into the space. You had an entrepreneur on before me. And those entrepreneurs, those developers are going to continue to build the actual utility that is necessary for this space to achieve, say, the grand vision. And the grand vision would be decentralizing data, wealth, and power. So really, as a structure, how this technology is set up is there's no centralized source of power or intermediary that dictates everything. It's a decentralized set of actors that provision, in the case of Bitcoin, a currency, in the case of Ethereum, a decentralized world computer, in the case of Filecoin, cloud storage, in the case of live peer transcoding and bandwidth. So there's all of these use cases, right? But the key is that they don't put the power, the data, or the wealth in any single person's hands. They distribute it broadly.
So do you see a downside to the crypto asset market moving forward, or do you only see an upside?
So there are definitely going to be fluctuations, right? When we look at the last major bear market we had from November of 2013 to January of 2015, the space as a whole lost 85% of its value. So that's you having $100,000.
Disaster.
I'm
oh my
out.
God, 85%. Oof.
That's a lot. That's painful.
And that's important to be aware of, right? Sure. It's not a consistent line up and to the right. It's going to fluctuate. We've already seen it fluctuate significantly in 2018. Yeah. And so I'm not here to sell, a field of roses. I think it's important people develop a deep understanding and conviction in the technology, which is why we wrote the book. And then from there, if they're really interested, then get involved as an investor or user or builder.
So unless you're bold and really brave, you're going to have to expect a lot of fluctuation and potentially a lot of loss.
Potentially.
We got some interesting questions here, Chris. Are you worried about the future of data mining? Is that related in any way to cryptocurrencies?
Well, so with data mining, I think of machine learning and artificial intelligence, and taking these really massive data sets and discovering patterns within them. That movement is one of the other really exciting ones in the technology space, and I think that it coincides actually with crypto assets. So there are networks out there like Olam, which actually crowdsource supercompute power to crunch through machine learning algorithms or to render graphical images. And so I'm not worried about data mining. I think it's man and machine. It's not just machine. But I do think that different crypto networks will accelerate data mining processes.
So I have to ask the last question, Holland, that we always ask Bookster.
Yes.
Quickly, Bookster guests, we always ask them why they wrote the book.
So I have a co-author too with Jack Tater, and we wrote the book specifically because we wanted to put together a comprehensive piece to teach someone, I call it 0 to 55.
Like
almost everything they would need to get comfortable in the markets. I would hope they would do a little more research on their own. But because the information is fragmented in the space amongst Twitter and Medium and Reddit and so on and so forth, we wanted to put everything in one book so that someone could pick that up and be ready to participate in this space.
So you heard it here first, Chris, author of Cryptoassests. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise
you guys.
with us.
Thank you.
Take care.
So our next guest is here for part 2 of our Bookster segment. Laurie Pickard is the author of Don't Pay for Your MBA, showing self-starters, career changers, and budding entrepreneurs how to navigate the expanding universe of online education. So Laurie, paying for your MBA, not a good idea.
Yeah, passé, totally passé.
Why is that, Laurie?
Well, because there's so much information out there on the internet. There are free courses from really elite universities that are available to anyone. And really everything that you would study in a traditional MBA program is just out there to be accessed.
So your book has a treasure trove of information, and you learned about the massive online open courses. How did you find out about that? What was the journey that your brain even opened up to that being a possibility?
Well, so I was actually researching MBA programs. This was about 4 or 5 years ago. I was looking into going to an MBA program, and one evening I had a friend who came over to our house and he said that he was taking a course that was just as good as the finance courses that he had taken in his finance MBA, and it was a free online course. And I felt like a light bulb went on over my head. This was a person who had an MBA and who was saying, these courses are just as good as what I studied in my MBA. And I started thinking, well, could somebody really just put together these courses and sort of fashion their own MBA program? I thought probably somebody had already done this since these courses had been around for a little while by this time. But no one had. So I made that my project, and I started a blog to document my journey.
So the million-dollar question, I guess, would be, what do employers think of this, a self-styled MBA?
Well, that really depends. So, of course, there are some employers who are total traditionalists who just want that piece of paper.
Those 3 letters.
That's right.
Yeah.
However, there are lots of employers who value self-starters, creative thinkers, people who can creatively solve problems, who show self-direction, and all of that is really well showcased in a self-directed business education.
I think more and more corporations are open to someone like you. I think 25 years ago, that was not the case, and you really had to have that special school and those special titles. And now we really value the intelligence and the emotional intelligence also that goes along with being a self-starter and what you have to do to move that piece forward.
Absolutely, and increasingly, in order to have a successful career and to be a successful employee or a successful entrepreneur or whatever it is that you do, you have to continually re-educate yourself and keep yourself up to date.
So what do you think about, you know, I agree with you, Holland. I feel like employers don't care anymore. By the way, I have a staff and I don't care whether they went to college or not.
Right.
Yeah, I think I value their skills and their knowledge and their expertise and their willingness to work and learn. Do you feel like maybe that might be a lot more mainstream than it is now in 10 years?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think the job market is really changing. And I think that because things change so quickly, that we can't just rely on an education that you get in your early 20s or at the very beginning of your career to kind of carry you throughout your entire career. But it also doesn't make sense for people to go back to school multiple times, take time out of the workforce, spend multiple tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. So these new resources, I think, will become increasingly more mainstream.
So all in all, we talk about when you have an MBA, you can be $100,000 or more in debt.
Or more.
Way more.
Yeah.
Well, I think there was just a report released by U.S. News or one of them that said it's roughly 100,000.
And you're also not working, so people don't think you're not working. So people think it's a double whammy because you're paying tuition and you're not working.
Yes. So how much money all in did you spend on your education?
Well, that's a hard question for me to answer because most of what I actually spent on running a website. But just on coursework and all of the kind of educational aspects of what I did, I spent less than $1,000, so around $700.
Oh my goodness.
All right, she's an inspiration with that.
You know, student debt is such a scourge. Is this one of the cures to our massive problem?
Absolutely, yes, I think it is.
And would you do it all over again? Would you get an MBA if it were free? Because I have a lot of friends that didn't pay for the MBA and got a scholarship.
You know, what I did actually was really fun. It was very creative. It allowed me to study exactly what I wanted to study. It actually put me in contact with so many people from around the world. I wouldn't change a thing.
Wow, her program's better. Yeah.
Do you think that this is that educational, you know, colleges and universities are really now going to have to look within and look at what they're charging and what the curriculum is, because there will be more and more people who take your advice, read the book, and there are other self-starters who have done, I would imagine, journeys very similar. Do you think that's going to shift the educational system in this country?
I think it might. It may be a little slower than, I don't think it's going to happen overnight. I think what's interesting about this is that people who would go the route that I'm going, what a university would be competing with is free. Because people who already have a degree or who don't think that they need a degree might choose, you know, this kind of option now. But universities want to capture that market too. And then increasingly, I think some of these resources are going to cut into their base. So yes, I think they are going to be increasingly moving in this direction.
And you know, one of the things is I'm here on behalf of a nonprofit named GenFKD, and one of our big things is higher ed reform. Do you really think we can actually hold them accountable within the system, or is this the only way? Do it yourself. Universities and the liberal arts education and even more formalized educational tracks were formulated when the internet didn't exist. Do you feel like higher education's out of date?
No, I actually think the universities, a lot of them are really pushing the envelope. So what is available now that's being created by universities wasn't available even 5 years ago when I started. And there are now full online degree programs that are available at a fraction of the cost of an on-campus program. So I actually do think that many universities are going to be innovators in this space, even if not all of them are. And if some of the dinosaurs, you know, might go away, I think some of these innovators really deserve our praise.
Okay, Holland, you get the last question, but you got to ask her why she wrote it. So go ahead.
Why did you write the book?
Well, I felt like I spent so much time amassing all this knowledge, and I started just getting a flood of requests through my website for people saying, hey, how do I do this too? So I know there are a lot of people out there who need this information and who could save potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Wow, so
thank you.
Laurie Pickard, author of
Wow.
Don't Pay for Your MBA.
Don't do it.
That's an easy one. I got the whole book and the title. Great title. Thank you so much, Laurie.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, next on the show we have Sharon. She is a style and personal brand expert. She is also the founder of FocusOnStyle.com, which is a website for female entrepreneurs who want to step into their star power and attract high-level clients and those opportunities. Welcome to the show, Sharon.
Thank you for having me.
You look great. You both look like there was no snow outside. I don't know how you pull it off.
I know. Well,
Did the limousine drop you off up front?
We kind of had a little something about Mary hair getting out of the cab, but we won't.
Share with us, you say that you're a personal brand expert. What does that mean exactly?
Well, I started out doing my own personal brand. So many, many moons ago, I wanted to be in fashion. And my mother was like, no daughter of mine is in fashion.
You won't make money.
You won't make money. You're going to have to be in the garment center. So I have a degree in marketing and business and PR and branding. And they didn't even call it branding back then. And I was a stylist for 15 years on photo shoots. I was pretty well known. I did everything from Vogue covers to making polyester sweats look so good. And then I had a newspaper column on a newswire that went out to 400 papers. And that was kind of, I realized that my business brain was sort of setting me forward as I was transitioning my career. And then when I had my son, I kind of found myself online. And that was back in 1999. He was a newborn, and it was a long story. But basically, I had to create a website like overnight. And that was more than 15. I can't do that. I don't want to do the math anymore.
Do the math.
It was 1999. So what happened was I started FocusOnStyle.com back then. And it was a style site, and it was a continuation of my column of giving stylist advice. But I kept needing and wanting to use my business brain and realizing that I was creating my own brand, that I was doing my own business. So what happened as the site progressed, I started helping other entrepreneurs develop their own brand and their own business, not realizing that I was even doing it for myself because it just kind of came naturally.
Beautiful.
You know, all these entrepreneurs are bold and fearless.
Yes.
I feel like I sometimes, and my dad always tells me, no, you are an entrepreneur, you're doing what you're doing, but a lot of this is fearless, what you were doing, because your parents told you.
Like you didn't know.
Your parents told you, don't go into fashion.
Don't do that.
You're never gonna make it. You know, that thick Northeastern accent. You're never gonna make any money.
You're gonna be with a bunch of Mentos. No way. Yeah.
So how did you, was it really ignorance or belief in yourself, a mix of both? What was it?
No, going with my gut. So maybe that is a belief in myself. But basically, I really believe in going with my gut. I'm not a dreamer. I'm not a projector of things I want to do. I kind of go with my gut with what feels right and how I transition my career. And I think part of it is, especially now with the internet, positioning is the new currency. So you need to position yourself to get what you want. And I just sort of subconsciously do it by, you're getting tired of something, you want something else, you're looking in other directions, so you sort of position yourself for the next thing, and it kind of happens because you're doing all the work without actually working. I know I hate air quotes, but it's true. It's kind of like you're setting yourself up, you're positioning yourself for the next thing, and your eyes are open, so you're aware and you're alert, and you know what's going on, and you're there.
All right, so for the female entrepreneurs who are watching today, what are the 3 staples that they need to have in their closet?
I don't think anyone needs a staple.
Okay.
I think that everybody is different. Everybody has a different style. What you need to have is something that's on brand for you. So if you're a business coach or a finance coach, you shouldn't be looking like a yoga professional. So I think that's the
so
the look matters.
We can't come in leggings.
You know, you shouldn't be coming out looking like you just cleaned the carburetor when you're talking about somebody like elevating their revenue, right? So you need to look on brand, and you also need to look like you and be authentic. And then, because, you know, everyone else, they hire stylists. You know, like, why hire me? I want to, like, empower women to figure it out themselves. So, like, when they put their hand in the closet every morning, they find a dress. When they're redesigning their website, they have the fonts. It's all the same. The look, the image, the brand, it all goes together. And the third thing would be being in tune with who you are. And in this visual world that we live in, your headshots are so important to how you're perceived. And that's why I created a program called Simply Amazing Headshots. And I have a free cheat sheet called How to Look Great in Photos.
That was my next question, because this is both genders. How do I make it?
But yeah, so the thing is, it's not what you wear, it's how you wear it, how you position yourself.
So just a quick, some points from the cheat sheet. So I'm on vacation, or even just you know, you talk about headshots, but pictures in general. What does a good picture look like?
It looks like you. It looks like you. It doesn't look like you're retouched and Rembrandt like put it on the internet.
or it's not your college photo.
It's not the college, right? Oh my God.
Right. Yeah.
You know, everybody looks 5 years younger in a 5-year-old photo, but you know. But when you walk,
which is why we like those photos.
Exactly. But when you walk in the room, you need to look like you. It's really simple. So you need to sort of look on brand, look pulled together, look polished. polished. And right now, how you present in that way is totally part of your toolkit as an entrepreneur, because we're all doing stuff like this besides just being on Facebook. You know, when you're watching us on Facebook, everyone else can be doing it too. So you need to, you know, have someone that's aspirational, that looks relatable, that looks like you, and you are the best at being you, and you're not trying to be somebody else online or, you know, walking in a networking event.
Do you have those hard conversations with people where you literally have to say, look, this was a great picture 25 years ago. You look
People
slightly,
do that less now, right?
You look
I
slightly,
hope.
Actually, you'd be surprised.
You would be surprised.
Yes.
Because, you know, not having style, not being in touch with your photo, I say, is a lot like BO. Like, nobody knows they're the one who stinks, right? They're like, oh, it's somebody else in the room. It's like, you know, my photo. It's like, no, it's great. Or like, my outfit. Oh, no, it's great. It's usually people come to me, or if I'm focused on style or enroll in one of my programs or as a client, when some moment comes when they have that click and they get it. Because you can't bring, what is that expression, a horse to water, whatever, you know, it is. Like, you can't tell someone, so they have to suddenly feel that they're not, like something's amiss. And then they're able to go and find, you know, and change themselves and elevate themselves.
Sharon, we're out of time, but you illuminate the reason why I love New York, because it's just like straight to the point.
To the point.
Your picture should look like you, stay on task, follow your gut, all fabulous advice.
Thank you.
Say the name of your website one more time.
It's focusonstyle.com, and my new book is Style Word, and it's all about quick New York minute quotes. I got like all sorts of call to actions. You got howtolookgreatinphotos.com to get the cheat sheet. You got the book, Style Word. You got Focus on Style, where you'll find everything.
Sharon, so nice to have you on.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So switching gears a little bit, we have the managing director of Tikun Olam, the first and largest supplier of medical cannabis in Israel. Stephen Konigsberg is here to talk about Tikun Olam. You know what that means? Have you ever heard that term?
I looked it up. Yes, I did a little research. I do know what it means.
I grew up in South Florida. I know what that means. And trends in the world of medicinal marijuana. What's up, Stephen? How are you?
Hey, David. Hey, Holland. Nice to be here. Nice to be here.
So medicinal marijuana.
Yeah, medicinal marijuana.
How the times have changed.
It has changed.
So over in Israel.
Yes, over in Israel, our company started back in 2005 as a non-for-profit. They started growing medical cannabis there solely for medical reasons, not recreational. And our founder, Tikun, was very much of an advocate, especially for children with epilepsy, with autism, and for soldiers with PTSD.
You guys were a little ahead of the curve.
A little bit ahead of the curve.
2005 was quite a while.
2005.
Yeah.
We are literally the first medical cannabis business in the world. So they started growing specific strains for various ailments, and we're focused on treating those ailments within the system. System is very strict. It's not a recreational system at all. Very difficult to access, but over the years, it's becoming much more easier to get access to this medicine. And I have to say, I was very much skeptical before I came into the business, and I've seen some amazing things over the past couple of years. Amazing things.
So you stated being skeptical. What got you to turn that around?
I think probably the studies that I've read, the patients that I've met, the clinics that I've visited when I was in Israel, especially with regards to gentlemen with PTSD. There's a lot of that in Israel, as everyone is in the army. So
many wars. Yeah.
Everyone is in the army, and so everyone has a lot of people have PTSD. They're having like a 20-30% PTSD rate. I've seen this help them immensely. I've seen it help children. I've seen it help adults with various different ailments, including epilepsy, as I mentioned. One of the studies that we're very, very proud of is our Crohn's study, which is focused on inflammatory bowel disease and Crohn's colitis. And it is proven on one level to be very, very helpful in this area, especially with regards to symptoms.
So for people who are not so up on their Hebrew, can you tell us what Tikun Olam means?
Sure. Tikun Olam means to heal the world effectively, repair the world. It is an ancient Hebrew tradition, an ancient Hebrew mitzvah. And the idea is to
that means to do good, right?
Do good, right? And to go out into the world and to effectively heal the world. It is as you say, it is very helpful to go out there and try to help people. And this is the process by which they want to affect that. And the name is the name, and it's quite incredible. I love the name.
You're trying to come stateside now?
Yes, we are. They have been growing specific strains for specific ailments for about 10 years. Right now, the strains are all over the world. They grow in Australia, Germany, Canada, and now in the United States. Currently available in legal states such as Delaware, Nevada, and Washington, and hopefully probably by the end of the year.
We're working on it in Florida.
Are you?
Working on it in Florida. Florida's a bit of a mess.
You're telling me.
Yeah, so it's pretty incredible. Hopefully again by the end of the year, we hope to be in about 10 different states.
Wow.
How much time and research goes into one particular strain for one disease?
Well, it's very interesting you say that. It depends on the disease, of course. And right now, there's a lot of work being done with children, especially in Israel. We are running a number of clinical trials in Israel. Some of them focused on autism. Some of them focused on Parkinson's. Some of them focused on symptomatic relief for palliative care. And these trials are run by specific hospitals, and they take time. We're now in phase 2 for some of these clinical trials. In fact, one of our trials, which was a Crohn's disease trial, as I might have mentioned before, was a double-blind, placebo-controlled study. And it was found to be proving extremely helpful with combating symptoms with regards to Crohn's disease.
So, for people who don't understand, because, marijuana is so associated with recreational use.
That's
correct. You guys kind of were the pioneers in finding, all the positive benefits. Do we even have a complete understanding of all the uses of marijuana?
No. Unfortunately not, especially in the states where we would like to be able to study this. The federal government has chosen to take a different route than a lot of these states that have legalized medical marijuana. And unfortunately, schools that have state funding and a lot of the hospitals are not allowed to conduct studies. It's very strange. Conduct studies here in America because it's illegal federally.
So what can the Israeli system teach us then?
That's a very good question. Right now, a lot of people are heading over to Israel to actually do these studies, sort of based on a lot of the research that we have done. And they're looking to utilize a system that is cannabis-friendly, we should say. And eventually, we all believe we are on the right side of history and that it will eventually happen here as well. We are hopeful.
Backing up for a minute, too, you spoke about autism, and autism has increased dramatically year over year, especially in this country, but around the world as well. And we know we're tracing that to a lot of toxins in the environment. So where are you in those trials with that particular strain of cannabis, and what type of value are you finding, and what is the increase to helping these children? That's
a good question. Autism being a very difficult disease to control, there's a lot of cognitive issues involved with autism. And what we are trying to focus on is, not necessarily the stuff that gets you high. We're not there to promote THC. We're not there to promote recreational. One of our strains, Avidecal, which, funny enough, has recently won one of the strains of 2018 by Rolling Stone, is effectively a highless cannabis. It is a very high CBD, cannabidiol, almost 20 to 1. Compared to THC, very low THC, does not get you high. And this has been found to be extremely helpful, especially in children with autism and epilepsy. The studies that are being conducted now are trying to prove what people generally already know in the marketplace.
So, Stephen, we are out of time, but super interesting.
Thank you.
Stephen
Konigsberg. Exciting business.
Tikun Olam?
Tikun Olam.
Tikun Olam. My Hebrew is not so good, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. All right, our next guest is the founder and CEO of Farmbox Direct, an organic food store that delivers delicious fruits and veggies to the entire continental U.S. Their menu changes weekly according to what's fresh, local, and in season. Welcome to the show, Ashley.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Wow, so did you get this idea from a farm share? I know I've participated in farm shares, and this sounded, in a way, very similar.
Right. My father is a farmer in Illinois, so I grew up knowing about CSAs and in love of all things agriculture.
CSA meaning?
Community-supported agriculture. So basically
got it.
where you get a farm share from different farms and you pull it together and you kind of divide it up. And the idea came from my daughter. I was a busy working mom here in Manhattan, and my daughter's this little self-proclaimed vegan, and I still had a really hard time finding accessibility to really great organic produce, even here in this big city. So it's really where the idea had come from.
And so how long have you been in business?
We just hit 4 years.
4 years. Congratulations.
We're off of the startup
Right.
Absolutely. So, you know, I grew up with semi-seasonal, but I grew up in South Florida. So, you know, when avocados came out, we ate avocados, we had a mango tree, whatever. But I feel like a lot of people eat things year round. They don't understand the seasonality and the reality of what that. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, eating by the seasons, you know, you're not having to source food from another country, or, you know, food logistics is really a big, important part of the company as well, because people don't realize that if it's the dead of winter and you're trying to get, you know, romaine lettuce, it's going to come from probably California, and it's going to come here all the way to New York before it hits, say, your Whole Foods at Columbus Circle, and there's maybe a 3-week transit time there, so it's harvested much earlier. So eating by the seasons, you know, your food is harvested when it really should be harvested. For Farmbox Direct, our main mission is to eradicate food deserts, and that's really what the company does, be having the ability to ship the box of produce to the lower 48 states. So we originally really started out being just a local produce based here in New York City and Brooklyn, but as we expanded, you know, going after a different mission, we definitely have to source from different places.
There are many areas in the U.S. which are underserved by the ability to have fresh produce. And part of it is that it's not in the area, but it's also an affordability issue as well. And those are the communities which most need your company. Is there anything in your business plan that allows you to start to get a foot in the door to really help those people at an affordable price?
Well, there's 24 million Americans that live in food deserts, but half of that number are considered low income. And it's just literally where they have no accessibility.
Really? So half of them are middle class or higher?
Correct.
In food
Oh
deserts?
my goodness.
Wow, that's a surprising statistic.
And it's really, you know, when you think about people in the food deserts, you think about any diet-related diseases are rampant in these areas, which drive up healthcare costs, things like that, that can really be eliminated with better diet, but they just do not have accessibility to fresh fruits and vegetables. We probably take it a little for granted here in New York, but you know, it's really incredible. Like Utah, for instance, has the largest amount of food deserts per capita.
Utah.
Yeah,
I know. I was
Utah's
really
such a
shocked at that.
well-run state,
I'm shocked.
and was a beacon
amounts
for
of,
free market economics, and really Utah.
And you know what we've really tried to do is I brought in Sam Cass, who was President Obama's chef, and he was also the senior policy advisor for nutrition to Michelle Obama. Obviously not in this administration, but when the Obamas were in office, and we've worked to create a pilot to accept food stamps online with the USDA. Because to date, the USDA has not allowed the food stamp card to be tendered as money online for the produce.
That's surprising, especially my groceries came this morning. I mean, I don't go to the supermarket anymore, and I feel like everyone's moving towards Amazon Fresh, of course.
Yes, exactly. And so, you know, literally the company, we have the ability to eradicate the food desert problem overnight, but it's getting the word out there, but it's also people that are in lower income. They have to be able to afford this over the bag of Cheetos.
Yes, and that has been the issue, the affordability. So do you feel that you'll be able to get into those markets and then accept those cards, and what are you looking at percentage-wise?
Well, we're hoping that we'll be able to accept food stamps online, you know, sometime in the life of the company. There's a lot of policy that has to be changed, obviously. And one thing that we do is we're very lucky that you know, like UPS gives us rates as if we're shipping 100,000 boxes a week to try to break costs to make this box affordable for the food stamp recipient.
Well, that's great to hear that they're working with you. I love that.
And you look great, you know, and I think people underestimate the power of good eating and looking good. Do you feel like that's a big part of your life, is eating well?
It's huge. I mean, I'm a big believer in my company. I even give off mental health days, because I think that there's a whole triangle, right? There's like how we eat, how we mentally feel, and all things have to be. Oh, I'm also a Libra, so I have to really be in balance. But I really believe that, you know, like when I travel and I'm in an airport and I don't really have time to eat healthy, you know, I don't feel great. And so can you imagine like our children in these food deserts who have to go to school and they're living off of, you know, hot dogs in a bodega or a convenience store or fast food. I mean, fast food is readily available in these food deserts. They open there because they know that there's nothing else available for them. So, you know, I think about that, like our children, and I'm a mother, trying to go and learn and have, you know, the best ability to do that with right food in their body. to me.
But even if you hadn't told me that, even if you were on pitching something else, I can tell you eat well. Because you have very light makeup on, and I don't know if the audience can see this. Her skin's perfect.
It is perfect.
And and I think people definitely underestimate the power of food to make you look good, feel good, and think clearly. That's the other one that's often left behind.
I definitely am plant-based eating. I rarely eat meat. And I don't consume a ton of dairy. And if I do, I'm big that if I'm going to have dairy, it's got to be organic dairy.
Well, you're an inspiration to all of us. I'm a terrible meat eater, but thank you for joining us. Absolutely.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Next up, we have the founder of SailorsNYC. That is a sailing club that offers sailors in the New York City metropolitan area an opportunity to enjoy recreational sailing on medium-sized vessels in a friendly club environment. We're happy to have you here. And is that Captain Levy?
Yes.
Yes.
It's Levy.
Welcome. I feel like I need to ole.
Thank you.
I was just on a sailboat in Key West over break. It was so nice. It's not easy.
It's not easy, but it's a lot of fun, and we can teach you. So, it becomes a second nature, and you just enjoy the time on the water. You don't need to work so hard.
Do I have to own a boat?
No, on the contrary. So our club is exactly for people who are sailors and they don't want to own a boat, because owning a boat costs a lot of money and it's a lot of
upkeep and time.
Exactly, exactly. So we own the boats, and our members basically get access to our boats. They can sail them throughout the sailing season, of course. If you're not a skipper, then they'll basically join other club members and sail with, and they can always bring a +1. So it's very inclusive, I would say.
So if David and I said we wanted to go sailing one day in June, you would find us a skipper? Because I'm not a skipper. Are you a skipper? No.
Yeah, of course. So the way it works, for people who are non-members, we offer what we call a hands-on experience and introductory sailing lesson. So that's a 2-hour for groups of up to 4 people. I mean, you can sign up individually, and basically you just try the water and see if you like it. If you become a member of the club, then you get allowance of sails, and you can sign up on your own through our online booking system. And yeah, you would go sailing with other club members who are qualified skippers.
Oh my gosh, I grew up in Miami Beach, and my best friend knows how to sail, but I don't. I miss that part of the Miami life.
The water sports?
Yeah, last time I was on a sailboat in Florida, it was like a wine cruise, wine and cheese cruise. So I'm a terrible example here.
Well, hey, mate, do you offer wine and cheese?
You can bring your own.
I don't know if that mixes well with being a skipper, though. It kind of impairs
Here's the thing. I mean, the idea is building a community and do stuff that people like to do together. So once a month we have docktails, for instance, cocktails on the dock.
Gosh, you notice it's on the dock. It's not on the sailboat.
Exactly. I mean, I'm not going to say it's entirely prohibitive on our sails, but skippers who are in charge definitely can drink, but we're accommodating other people as well.
Well, it sounds like it's a great opportunity to really make new friends and build camaraderie and do something really different here in New York City, right?
Yeah, you can't do it in the winter though, can you?
You can't do it in the winter, but you can definitely keep immersed in the topic. So we have lessons that we offer throughout the winter, and we do some meetups, and people always get the chance to meet like-minded friends. We also organize trips around the world. While in the winter we would sail in the Caribbean. We're very big into Cuba. We already organized 3 trips to Cuba. Yeah, awesome.
It's getting a bit more difficult to travel there.
It's with a group, not. I mean, we are a group and we are in compliance with OFAC regulations. So if you come with us in November, for instance, everything is going to be covered on that end.
I was just there, and I think it's a great opportunity to go there in a group. There was a sailboat parked at the port of Trinidad.
Oh, amazing. Of course. Though we sail out of Cienfuegos.
Oh, you sail out of Cienfuegos, which is the neighboring city. Great. Yeah. It's a very complicated place, but I highly recommend it.
This is the time to go to Cuba, by all means.
I mean, and person-to-person exchange, can help.
People to people. Yeah. People to people. Educational. So we do basically a combined experience of land and sea. So you get to see the real Cuba from many different angles, and it's very interesting.
Do you enjoy going there?
I love it. I've been 3 times in 1 year, so I think I like
it. 3 times in 1 year as well.
All right, so I've got to go with one of the two of you.
Yeah, for sure.
So, you know, from the entrepreneurial angle, let's talk about a little bit about Captain Levy. How'd you get into this?
It's funny because I used to work for a corporate, and one day a guy came and asked me, would you like to leave the corporate and let's open a business? I said, no way, I'm not opening a business. My parents had been entrepreneurs and self-employed all their lives, and this is hard, I don't want to do that. But eventually I found myself as an entrepreneur. I had already one business. I owned a flower shop back in Tel Aviv. I was involved with other entrepreneurial businesses. And after moving to New York, I basically, although I found like a regular 9-to-5 job, I was feeling like the entrepreneurial bug is still in me, and I found a topic that was interesting enough. I mean, I've been a sailor for many years, and I combined the two and became a business owner that has to do with sailing, basically.
Nitsan, you're getting so many hellos.
Oh.
From Ronan, from Hendry, from Smeda, from Oscar Rodriguez.
Wow.
You got a lot of fandom out there,
Yeah.
don't you?
Thank you, thank you. All of my fans.
Was it worth it in the end to leave your 9-to-5 job and make it work?
Oh, of course, by all means.
You highly recommend it?
Yeah, highly recommend it, of course.
Any plans for expansion?
Sure. This year, we're already looking to add a 3rd vessel to our fleet. And this year, we're already offering a lot more international flotillas. So we're growing from like 1 or 2 flotillas in the first couple of years. Last year we had 3. This coming year we have 5 planned, including Thailand. So definitely expanding and expanding. That's of course.
Exciting.
Yeah, our community
Thailand
is
and
expanding.
Cuba, sign me up.
Yeah,
Do it.
Seriously, with
We're
one
on
spare,
board.
with one spare time, Holland.
exactly. And the community is growing, and this is actually one of the most important things. I mean, you have more friends now. You can choose from more activities. And I think this is what our members really like about SailorsNYC, that it's like it grows for the better, and they like being part of it.
Well, Captain Nitsan Levy, so nice to see you.
Thank you very much.
Jealous.
Thank you for
Wish I was
having
a
me.
skipper, but I'm not.
Okay, join us. We'll teach you how to sail.
So that's it. We're out of time. As always, we want to send our thanks here at Bold TV. Of course, first to my lovely co-host, Holland. That was really fun.
It was fun.
This
Thank
is
you
fun.
so
Come
much
back
for having me.
sometime.
I
Of
will,
course.
absolutely.
Man, let me tell you, Holland did her homework. She prepared. She was a model prisoner. You were, seriously. And also a big thanks to our hardworking team at all the organizations that make this show possible, GenFKD, Bookster, and of course, Bold TV. I'll be back next week at 9 a.m. with a whole new lineup of guests, but in the meantime, you can catch some familiar faces, Carrie Sheffield and Clay Aiken this Friday at 10 a.m. right here on Bold TV. We'll see you all soon.
Bye.